Hey guys, welcome back to the shack. Tonight I want to do a video that several people have requested, and it's got to do with doing photos with diode lasers. There's a lot of different ways that you can do a photo with a diode laser, and tonight I'm just going to show you the simplest, easiest way that I can come up with to do them with minimal tools or minimal computer skills. That seems to be part of the problem is, you know, if you're a master of photography and you have the best photography equipment and you have access to some of the best software around, these steps will be pretty easy. There are going to be some software requirements for what I'm showing you, the method that I'm showing you, but there are other softwares that you can substitute. There are some free softwares out there that you can use, but everybody keeps asking me how I do it, and so tonight I'm going to walk you through the process of how I take a image off of Facebook or whatever, just a standard image, and manage to turn that into a burn and get some pretty decent results from it. So if that's something you're interested in, stick around. We'll be right back. All right guys, so before we get too far into the video, I just want to point out to you that tonight I'm going to be using the Two Trees TS2. This is a 20-watt machine, and as many of you know, 20-watt machines tend to get a reputation for not having as much detail as a 10-watt. But I've been doing a lot of testing with this machine, and I've determined that even though it may not be as fine as the same machine in a 10-watt, I think the results will be sufficient enough that I can get a pretty good image. And I'm not going to be using any kind of special materials tonight. I do have a small piece of MDF that I'll be using to get more of a consistent burn and a little bit better images. But all in all, there are better materials to use than what I'll be using tonight. So I just want to share with you some of the testing that I've done. Like I said, this is a Two Trees that they sent out for me to test and use, and I've been getting some use out of it. It's growing on me. The Z-axis has now become something that I actually enjoy using and that I like, and I'm glad I got it. And now that I've overcome that little, a bit of a training hurdle for myself, I'm getting some really good results with the machine, starting to experiment with the Z-axis and see where I'm going to be able to use the Z-axis to benefit me. And that's some of the things I'm going to go over here with you tonight. But first thing I want to point out to you is when I first got the machine, like many of you, I've heard the 20 watts, the kerf is so much larger, the dot size is so much larger, and to an extent that is true in most cases. But with what I do and the type of material that I use, I felt like after seeing the machine work for a little while, the dot size was going to be sufficient to do what I wanted to. But I wanted to set up a test just to where I could kind of show you guys. And with this machine having the power Z-axis, I was able to play around with the elevation of the axis during the cuts to determine, how much of a difference does it make if I'm a millimeter or two high or 10. So that's what I've did is I've created a little test burn here. And as you can see, guys, the dot size on this machine, if I can get the camera off of me, the dot size on this machine does really well all the way up to 9 millimeters. It's still not terrible. But where we're going to be running it tonight is going to be right there at the 0. And at the 0 is where it is the most fine of all of these. It's hard to tell in the video. All right, is my video backwards? Or is it because I got the lens flipped around? But anyway, 0 all the way to 9. I've tested it, and these are the two. This is 0 versus 9 right there, where you can see where the lines intersect. That's the difference in the kerf. So all in all, this thing's got a really fine point, and I think it's going to work out really nice for what I'm trying to do. So one of the things that motivated me to do that test and to see exactly how fine the dot was on this thing and try to evaluate more specifically, not necessarily the cutting ability, because it is a 20 watt, it does cut well, but I wanted to know how well it would do at engraving and doing fine detail. You may have saw a couple of little small badges that I did the other day, and it did a pretty good job. I've tried to do, give me a little bit of a 3D effect, playing around with the Z-axis and just doing some burns. And this is one of the burns that I've done with it before I got into the images. This is kind of what inspired me to do the images. And I don't know if you can see the detail, guys, but this is a pretty good sized piece of material. But the detail and the ability to kind of get that, you know, that 3D appearance on the badge, that was pretty, I thought that was pretty awesome. It turned out pretty well. So it struck me, and I was like, well, let me try an image. So I did my handy dandy image of the girl with the dog, and it turned out really well, even though this is just Luan. This is simply Luan material. This is not MDF. This is not any of the really expensive materials. So I decided that since a lot of you guys has asked for it, tonight we're going to be doing an image. I'm going to take an image off of my Facebook page. I've downloaded it to the computer, and I'm going to put it in the computer, and I'm just going to walk you through the steps that I use. And remember, guys, this is the way I do it. There's 100 different ways that you can do it. You can use Photoshop. You can use the tool that I use to remove the background. You can just burn the background. It doesn't matter. But I'm going to go through the settings and the way that I do it. And like I said, guys, there's plenty of ways out there to do it. This is a way that I use, and I'm going to show you the results that I get doing it. All right, guys, so we're over the laptop, and what I'm going to do, I'm just going to walk you through this entire process. I'm going to go over to my Facebook page here, and I've got a picture of me and my partner Max, and I am simply going to download that image and save it to the computer. The program that I like to use, and it works well for me, is Adobe Express. This is a paid-for program. There may be some free ones out there that you can use that does a better job or that's easier for you to use, but this is the program that I like. And if you log in and you go to the Home tab here on Adobe Express, there's this neat little button right here for Remove Background. And it is as simple, guys, as going in here, going to where your image is, and hitting Open. Adobe does the magic for you. It does help if the background is a high contrast background, and the higher the quality of the photo and the higher the quality of the camera, the better results you'll get on this. So once I do that, as you can see, it has removed all of the background from the image for me, and so now I can just simply hit download. All right, so those two photos should now be in my download folder and not have a background, and there they are. This is the very first one right here. So we'll just use that one for now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open it up, and you can see the image. And like I said, this was taken with a pretty decent camera, so it done a really good job of defining the edges and getting everything cleaned up on the background removal. If your photo isn't as crisp, or if there's a lot of different stuff in the background, sometimes it can be a problem. So whatever software you use to remove the background, just make sure you get as much of it as you can. I've got one little spot of white right here that didn't get removed, but white is not really a color you want to concern yourself with because it'll result in no burning. It's those the darker colors or any kind of obstructions from in here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go to Edit. This is using the Windows utility. This comes in any Windows version that you have. All right, and you're going to have a lot of different settings over here that you can choose from as far as the color. Slate is more or less, that filter is going to kind of draw some accents. It's going to put some accents to it and so forth, but it's a good black and white kind of quick modification of it. If you want to use these to try to highlight things, you can. Slate is kind of a good one because it more or less black and whites it for you, and you can see the contrast between the whites and then the darker colors, because these are going to be like, if you burn this image, the blacks that you see, such as on Max and this part right here and around the boots, those parts are going to be where your maximum power setting is going to be used. All of the rest of this is going to be a percentage of your maximum power in order to get that shading and that gray. So basically here, I'm just going to hit save because that contrast I think is going to work out well. And the more dark light contrast you can have, in my opinion, the better. So then it's fairly simple when you come in the LightBurn. It's going to make it a black and white image when you bring it in. There is no Like, there is no other color. So, bringing it in. This is the one we just, wait a minute. Yeah, this is the one we just did. So, I'm going to bring that in. And for some reason, it's not outputting. So, as you can see, it brought it in. It is a black and white image, of course. I did use that slate filter that Windows provides. I've gotten to where I like that filter. It works out pretty well. Let me change my machine over here to the 2 trees. That'll be the machine we're going to use to burn this with. So go ahead and get it in the workspace so I can get it sized accordingly. The biggest thing with this is going to be you're going to need to know what you want your blacks to be. That's what all this hinges on. This is, with it being in image mode, this is going to be your blacks. That's the power it's going to run. Everything under that's going to be a percentage of that. So I'm going to run the DPI right here at 300 DPI. Not going to be doing any kind of correction or anything like that. You can use grayscale, guys, but be warned, grayscale can make your laser act weird, and it does a lot of slowing down, speeding up, and I just prefer Jarvis. Stucky works, but Jarvis is what I always use, and it tends to do me a pretty good job. As you can see, the overscan is set to 2.5, and the line interval, because I'm at 300 DPI, is going to be set at 0.0847 there. Now, with this machine, that's pretty competitive to what the dot size is. So if I go any higher than 300, I'm going to start overlapping the lines. So I'm just gonna leave that there. I think that'll give me just enough. That's basically using all the potential that the factory says that this machine can give me by running it at 0.08 on the line interval. So I'm gonna hit OK, and I've got a piece of material in there. Okay, that's not the right material, but I'm going to get this resized, and I'll move you out here to the camera to the outside so you can see what's going on. I'm going to resize this and change over to the MDF, and we'll go from there. All right, since I only have one more piece of MDF, and I just realized that, I'm going to do a quick test burn of this image just to make sure that I get the contrast and the shading that I want on a piece of the Luan, which is similar to what I used on the demonstrations that I showed you. So I'm going to get that set up and going to run it, and then we'll go from there. All right, guys, so with the 2 trees, what I'm going to do to start with is I'm going to raise the Z-axis up to get the laser above the work area and the material. I'm going to take then, I'm going to use the little map tool to move the laser, to navigate it over the top of the material. Once I get it over the top of the material, I go over to my command screen here, and I'm going to hit my engrave focus macro. That's going to run the machine down. It's going to touch off, do the focus, and once it finishes, it'll stop. All right. One thing that I've had to learn with this machine is after you do that, you simply rehome it. Now the machine is focused for this material. As long as I don't change materials, there's no need of me to do anything to the focus. If I want to move the Z-axis up or down, I can do so in the cut layers, and I don't have to re-zero again, because basically what I just did is I told the laser that 0 on the Z-axis is at this location. And so that's where I'm going to be running the engrave as well as the cut, because it really doesn't need anything extra to cut through the 4.5. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to make sure the line also, the line that's going to cut it out, I'm going to make sure it is lower than the layer of the image file. That way it does the image first, then cuts it out. That way if you've got a piece of twisted wood or something springs up, you don't have any surprises during the engrave process, which I shouldn't have with a small piece of material. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to give it a little bit of air assist, guys, because I like to run a little bit of air regardless of what I'm doing, just to keep the lens clean. So I'm going to give it a little bit of air assist. I'm going to go ahead and start it, and then I'm going to have to power up the smoke chamber here. But go ahead and hit the start button on that. And as you can see, it's starting to do the burn, so that's going to take a little while, and we'll check back here in a few minutes. All right, guys, so after a little bit of burning, this is the results that I'm getting on the Luan with the settings that I set up in LightBurn. I went ahead and stopped it once I got to see the detail and see what was going on with it. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back now. I've adjusted the settings, played around a little. The MDF is going to burn a little bit different, but I've kind of adjusted my settings slightly to try to get good burn with the MDF. But as you can see, I got some really good resolution out of the machine, even with the grain of the wood interfering. It's doing a good job. So I'm gonna put the MDF on there and let that run. It's gonna take quite a while, but we'll be back and see what kind of results it gets. All right, guys, so I am re-zeroing with the MDF. And like I said, the Z adjustment on this machine is really kind of growing on me. And I'm gonna frame that out. I have adjusted my speeds. I'm gonna be running 140 millimeters per second at 100% output, 300 DPI. I did increase the size of the photo. The cut, I'm gonna be running 6 millimeters a second at 4 passes just to make sure it cuts all the way through this MDF, because this stuff can be stubborn at times. So here we go. Let's see what kind of results we get. I've got it set to a 180 start, which means it's gonna start up at the top and work its way down to the bottom. That should give me a good idea of what the burn's gonna look like, because that's some of my medium tones are gonna be in the face area. So I'm gonna let that run for a minute. And just give it a few minutes and see what it looks like. See how well this is gonna burn. All right, guys, so after quite the lengthy burn because of the resolution and the size of the image, I got the image completed, and I think it turned out pretty well. This is kind of a dark image. There wasn't a lot of contrast in it, but all in all, I think the machine performed well. And with the minimal processing that I did to the photo, I think I wound up with a pretty good result. So here's what the end result looks like, guys. And I'll try to get this thing up here and drop the actual image beside it. But if you pay attention to detail, you can see the logo on the shirt. I mean, you can recognize me through that. A lot of the fine detail, the wrinkles in the shirt and whatnot, the pants. The dog, if you look really close, you can actually see where it says police on Max's collar right there, which is pretty good detail. So all in all, guys, I think it turned out really nice. With images, like I said, a lot of times, and not every image is going to process the same way, guys. If it's an image that's taken on a 24 megapixel Nikon full sensor camera, it's going to do better than if it's something somebody snapped with you know, a straight talk wireless phone. There's going to be differences in the photo quality, which is going to result in the differences in the end result. With this picture, for example, I happen to know my buddy took this photo with a really good camera, but the photo was added to Facebook, and that's where I downloaded it from, as you saw. And you lose a lot of resolution when you upload photos to Facebook and then re-download them, but it still turned out really well. So all in all, guys, the machine does excellent on images. I did go over this with the sander ever so slightly. In my experience, especially with wood, a lot of times you can bring out details of the engrave that you can't see unless you lightly sand it. Now, I want to stress, lightly sand it with some really fine sandpaper. And you'll kind of see some of those details and some of those lines expose themselves as you do so. Because a lot of times the soot and the burning, even though it's not burning a lot of material, it does discolor the material to the left and the right of that deep burn, which kind of causes more of just a black flat image. But a little bit of sandpaper, some compressed air, and you get it going. And like I said, I haven't put anything else on this yet, guys. There's no polyurethane or polyacrylic or anything on that. But all together, I think it turned out really well. One step that I did do before I engraved this, and I know it's MDF, and typically it's pretty smooth, but this MDF had some real fine lines in it, so I went ahead and ran some sandpaper over it prior to the engrave to make sure that I had a nice, smooth, even surface, so that I didn't have anything dictate into my image. So that's something you might want to look at too with your material, whether it be MDF, plywood, or whatever, is it may need a good smoothing over for the surface, because the smoother the surface that you start with, the crisper the image is going to be. So that's my tips, guys. All right, guys, once again, this machine was donated to me for testing, so If you didn't catch that part, there it is. And if you're interested in looking at the machine, the Two Trees TS2, this is the 20 watt model. There'll be a link down in the description. You can check that out and go see the machine. So far, it's performing really well for me. The Z-axis, like I said, it will take some getting used to if you've never had one. But once you get used to it, it kind of grows on you. And I'm becoming a little more dependent upon it now. So it's kind of spoiling me on that. But if there's anything that I missed in this, guys, like I said, feel free to shoot me a comment down below. Hit that thumbs up button, and I'll try to cover it a little more in depth. But I don't want to confuse everybody and overcomplicate the process of doing photos. If you're trying to do some of these 3D graphics and stuff like that, yes, there's a lot more goes into it. But if you're just somebody that just got your laser and you want to try to put a photo on a piece of wood, this is a good starting point. You can always, you know, set and polish your craft and do a little bit better and do a little bit better. I'm not, you know, this is not all I do. I do these. I think the results turn out well. And to be honest, guys, if you're happy with the results you're getting, that's what matters. So this is a simple process, minimal tools needed to be able to do it. If you don't want to take the background out of your photo, you don't even need Adobe. I do recommend, especially early on, it makes it a lot easier the less variables are in the photo. It makes it a lot easier to get it tuned in and make it look nice. So if you can get the background out of the photo, I recommend doing that in the beginning. But if not, play with the settings, figure out what works for you, and just have fun, guys. That's what it's all about. So I hope the video helps. I hope you enjoyed the content. If you did and you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button. And until next time, guys, be safe and have a good day.